If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
What a save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Lodero leaves absolutely no doubt. The Sounders rule the region.
Seattle Sounders is campeón.
It's gone! They're gone! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Nice work on your little yacht thing.
And Portland can't say shit.
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder Hart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Overcome seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network, sponsored by Full Pull Wines, Hacks and Ferments, and our subscribers. We're recording on Tuesday, July 29th, 2025. I am your host, Jeremiah Shan. Joining me today is my co-host, Aaron Campo, and our producer, Lickett. The Sounders are coming off a 2-2 tie with Atlanta United, in which the Sounders scored their 7th latest goal ever and gave up the second latest goal they've ever allowed. We'll certainly talk about the game, but I mainly want to talk about it in the context of where it leaves the Sounders as they enter the League's Cup break. Let's just do a little overview here. The Sounders are 10-6-8, 4th in the West, but they're as close to 8th as they are 3rd. They've got an improved offense over last year, but are allowing goals at a much higher rate. Add it up, Aaron. And how are you feeling right now with about 10 games left to go in the regular season?
It's a tough question. I think that if you had told me at the beginning of the season that Jordan Morris was going to play 400 minutes leading up to the League's Cup break, and that Pedro de la Vega was going to have 3 goals and Jesus Ferreira was going to have 3 goals, and the Sounders were somehow much better offensively and in 4th place, I would have been thrilled. I would have been really confused, but I would have been thrilled.
It doesn't quite seem to math, but yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's very strange. I don't think anybody saw, an 8-goal season from Danny Mazowski. But yeah, so, I mean, on the one hand, I think that considering what they've been up against in regards to injuries, I mean, look at all the games Yamar missed. Look at the fact that we're starting Alex Roldan at center back for a couple of games.
Jackson Reagan missed a bunch of games.
So I do think that
Stephen Fry has missed a bunch of games.
Yeah.
João Paulo has missed a bunch of games. We could go on, but I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, I mean, it's true. I keep forgetting about guys who have missed a bunch of games, and it is, I don't think it can be overstated how well the depth has held up this year. To have
Paul Arriola has missed almost the whole season. He was one of the biggest offseason acquisitions. Anyway.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I do think it's pretty remarkable what they've been able to do with all of those problems. However, the expectations of this team are what they are. And I think, I feel okay going into the stretch. I mean, I think that it is conceivable that they could finish as high as second. I don't think it's likely, but I think it's conceivable. They're 8 points out of first place with a game in hand. I mean, they've made up gaps bigger than that in less time before. So I think they're pretty well positioned. But if the question is, do I think they're going to make a run like that? Do I think that, they've got that this is a team with elite potential? I'm not sure that I do. And I'm not sure what they can conceivably do during this window, short of, faith healing Jordan Morris's shoulder, to get me to a place where I think that they're capable of going on that kind of run. I think that they're set up well for the playoffs still. I think when push comes to shove, Brian Schmetzer can set up this team to be extremely difficult to play against come playoff time. And I think that they've got enough firepower that they could certainly make an MLS Cup run. But in terms of playing down the stretch like an elite team, I'm not sure. And it's frustrating to be in that position.
Well, there was an interesting conversation on Blue Sky this last week that was started by Sounder at Heart contributor Brian McKay, and he was kind of talking about how he was shocked at how frustrated some parts of the fan base are. I'll be honest, those people are not necessarily on Sounder at Heart, so I don't want to create like a straw man argument here. But if I were to give a good faith argument to the idea that there are a lot of fans frustrated, I think there's some reason why, like whether or not you're pulling out your hair, whatever, the Sounders are coming off a frustrating 2-2 tie where they drop points. And I think you can probably make a credible argument that there are at least 6 points that they've left on the table this year, where there are games that, you don't need to come up with a fantastical way that they should have claimed all 3 points. They dropped points very late against Charlotte at home in the season opener. They dropped points after leading 3-0 at home to Colorado. That game is also still somewhat fresh in our memory. And then, of course, they dropped 2 points, which I think on balance, you could argue that they maybe didn't deserve all 3 points against Atlanta, but they were in position to get those 3 points, if not for a absolute thunder strike from 25 yards on the literal last play of the game. And so in that way, I think you can sort of talk yourself into they should have had those 3 points. And, if you give them 6 more points, the table looks not dramatically different, but the outlook looks very different, where they would be tied for third place and they'd only be 2 points out of first place. And I don't know if that is a more accurate reflection of how they've actually played this year than what the table says. According to expected points, I think the Sounders may actually be slightly overperforming what expected points say they should be at. But it's, but I do think you're right. If you give all the caveats of the injuries and whatever else, it's hard to be too frustrated with where they are. But at the same time, it also feels like the West is there for the taking, and they're probably not going to take it.
Yeah, and that is frustrating. And I think also you can be frustrated with dropping those points in those games. The Colorado game, I'm still pissed off about, and everybody else should be.
It's utterly ridiculous.
Yeah. The Atlanta game, I'm on honestly, and we'll get into that later, but I'm honestly not too bothered with the way that one turned out. But I still think, I mean, if you drop 2 points on the literal last kick of the game, I think it's totally valid to be frustrated. And they've just been a frustrating team at times this year. I mean, we've talked a lot about this, but they've made mental mistakes that are pretty baffling. They've had bad red cards. They've given up bad penalties. But they've had some games where they probably should have walked out of there with 3 points where they did. And they've been much, much better at home this year. They've been a much more interesting, fun team to watch, I think, by most people's standards this year. So it really has been a mixed bag. And I think that the injuries and everything like that is always, for me, it is an explanation rather than an excuse until the team is doing everything they can within their power to put the best team they can on the field, and they are not doing that. And so I think until they're doing that, until they're using until they're spending resources to fill the holes on the team, I think it's fair to say they're not doing all they can to be as good as they can. And so I don't really care about the injuries as an excuse. I think that's totally valid. And that's more or less how I feel even though from an analytical standpoint of how have the players done, how has Brian Schmetzer done with what he has to work with, I'm actually pretty happy with the outcome. So I'm disappointed with the club's effort. I'm happy with the team's effort, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and it's been and I think it fairly encapsulates sort of the frustrating nature of this team. And another way I'm kind of thinking about it right now is, am I more satisfied with where the Sounders are now than where they were at this time last year? And I think I am, because last year around this time they were sort of just coming into form, and they were doing it mostly through suffocating defense. And they played a lot of, I think we had a lot of discussions last year about how what's boring soccer. And to me, boring soccer was not winning. And if you're winning games, it doesn't really, you sort of like can live. Like I wasn't really bothered by the 1-0 wins, but I do think just from a pure aesthetics perspective, this season has been a lot more, the individual games have been a lot more fun to watch, even if the results are sort of in the aggregate pretty similar to what they were last year.
Yeah, I think there stretch, this team was a lot of fun last year, but I definitely think over the balance of the season, the Sounders have been more fun. And there was a time earlier in the season when they were still kind of struggling to score goals, but they were still more fun to watch than they were struggling to score goals last season. Yeah. And you could tell there was a plan of attack. They understood maybe what their shortcomings had been last season. And you could tell that they wanted to go forward. They wanted to attack. They wanted to score. It just wasn't happening. And to me, that's a lot different than the way it felt last year, where it just felt like they were just trying to get a goal because they knew they could hang on in every game. But they weren't trying that hard to get a goal because they knew they were going to have trouble coming back. So I do think it's, up to this point in the season, it's been a lot more fun this year. But also I think I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think at this point in the season last year, they were still out of a playoff position. And, we were kind of wondering whether or not it was going to be the end of the Brian Schmetzer era. Like, I think there were still a lot of questions about that kind of stuff at this point last season. Maybe things had turned around a little bit by now. I really don't remember.
I'm actually looking that up because I'm curious how they were at this point last year. So let's see. We're at July. We'll call it July 28th. So the Sounders were sitting in 7th last year. They had played one more game. They basically had two more losses and 2 more losses. They had played one more game and they had 2 more losses, but they were also one better on goal difference.
Yeah. Which is pretty funny. How many goals did they scored?
They had scored 34 goals so they had scored 4 fewer goals in one more game. So it's not a totally different. I mean, it's similar. It's a similar place that they were last year. But anyway, it is kind of funny to look back on that. They were also closer to being out of the playoff. They were only 6 points up on the 10th place team. So they were they were farther out of the lead as well. Like they were 12 points out of first. So it was, I think you can argue pretty credibly that they're in a significantly better place right now than they were last year at this time of year. That said, it's been a funny season, and it, like you said, it's been a lot of injuries. It's been a lot of, Tim Foss wrote about this in post-game pontifications this week, which I hope people are enjoying, getting a different angle on that. He and I have been switching off more often, but he wrote about how this has sort of been a season of almost. Like they've almost had some really sort of signature performances. I don't know that Atlanta, this would not have been a signature performance, but I think it would have been, one of the characteristics of this team that I think that they have shown is that there is a resiliency to them, that they have been able to put up with a lot of setbacks, and they've managed to keep moving forward. Like they had a couple really bad games this year. They had that 3-0 loss to San Diego where they looked like they totally got outclassed. And then they had the 3-0 loss to Vancouver where the wheels just totally came off. And it looked like the season might really spiral a bit from there. And instead, because that was the game right before Club World Cup. And of course, what they did is they sort of regrouped, and they had they didn't get any points in the Club World Cup, but they were credible. And I think that they sort of showed that they could hang with good teams. And I think they've at least credibly ridden some of the momentum from that. And they're 3-0-3. They haven't lost since the Club World Cup. They're scoring a bunch more since the Club World Cup. Before the Club World Cup, they were actually behind last year's pace and scoring, and last year's pace and scoring wasn't even that good. So like these last 6 games, I think have been some somewhat significant steps forward, and there's been some positive play. Play of specific players has, I think, emerged as viable, and so there are definitely things you can point to as progressing forward. And yet here we are, and it's like, God, this feels like it could be more than it is.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to feel, and I think that we talked about the caveat of Jordan Morris missing a bunch of time, specifically because I think coming into the season we felt like, all right, if anything happens to Jordan Morris, we're screwed.
We're in trouble.
But that hasn't ended up being the case. Danny Musovski has been great.
No.
He has been elite by per 90 numbers. He's been elite at striker this year. So yes, they haven't had Jordan Morris, and that has hurt them. I definitely think this team is better if they have Jordan Morris, but they're getting good production from that spot from Danny Musovski.
Well, yeah, 12 goals from your number 9 spot at this point in the season is not elite production, but it's certainly, if Jordan Morris had 12 goals right now and Danny Musovski had 0, I don't think anyone would be losing their mind over it.
No, I think people would be annoyed at Danny Musovski, right? That's not, that's not too much different than last year. So, and so they have gotten production from that spot, and they've still struggled. And they've gotten production from Albert Rusnak. He has 10 goals this year. They haven't gotten the production they've needed elsewhere. And so I think, that's definitely frustrating for people. And the good news is that Jesus Ferreira has been, I think, really quietly pretty good for a while now. I mean, since the Club World Cup, at least, he's been, I think, he's looked a lot more comfortable. He's looked like he understands his role a lot better. And then Pedro de la Vega, obviously, the last couple of games has been really good. And so I think I think it's reasonable to expect a little bit of regression from Danny Musovski, although I don't know how that much, because his underlying numbers are so good. I mean, I think he's actually still underperforming his XG by a decent amount.
It depends on where you look. If you look at FBref has him almost exactly on his XG, whereas ASA, American Soccer Analysis, has him underperforming by a couple goals. But point being, the underlying numbers suggest that what he's doing production wise is not just some hot streak, that he is consistently getting himself into dangerous positions, and he's finishing at a rate that you would expect. Yeah. And I think, that's backed up by what I see when he plays. I think that his movement is great. I said, I think it was in the Discord, it might have been on Blue Sky, but I said that I thought he had the best off-ball movement on the team, and some people were pretty incredulous about that, but I stand by that. I think that he has some of the best off-ball movement that I've ever seen from a Sounders forward. I think that, and so I think that he's plenty capable of continuing to put up good production at that position. And if the development we've seen from Pedro de la Vega over the last few games is real, and Jesus Ferreira can continue to contribute, and Albert Rusnak can contribute, especially given that the strength of the schedule down the stretch is not super strong. And that was another discussion, I think, that I saw on Blue Sky, about the fact that, yes, the Sounders have been much better over the past 6 games. But the strength of the schedule hasn't been as strong. Well, the converse of that is that the strength of the schedule in the first chunk of the season was actually quite hard. I think that through the first half of the season, the Sounders had far and away played the most difficult schedule. And I think the rest of the way, they've got it a little easier. So if they can continue to perform pretty well against these bad to average-ish teams, they're going to have a better second half of the season than they had first half of the season, and that'll be reflected at the end of the year. So there are plenty of reasons for optimism, I think.
especially if Joao Paulo can get back healthy and, they can get some semblance of stability in the back at, center back and at left back as well. I think, this team can be really good, but they've just been so inconsistent in attack that it could all fall apart at any moment. And I don't think anybody would be too shocked.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think is sort of the key to the final phase of the regular season? And I suppose we could include Leagues Cup in that phase. I don't think we're really doing that, but over this last stretch of games, what to you is either the key players or the key, what elements of the game are you going to be looking at?
I think if Pedro de la Vega can show consistently 80% of what he showed in the last 2 games, that's going to be massive. I mean, because he in the last 2 games, he has looked like not only worthy of a DP spot, but like a franchise cornerstone level player to me. I think he's just been completely outstanding and just exactly the kind of player I think we've all were hoping we were getting in the first place and have been hoping to see. He's been incredible. So if he can play 80% of that level the rest of the way, that's a damn good player that you haven't had before, who can create goals, who can score goals himself, who can give all sorts of fits to defenses, who gives the Sounders that transitional threat that they haven't had with Jordan being out. And I think that's going to be massive. And if he regresses and goes back to being the player he was earlier this season, which is not a terrible player, but certainly not a player living up to, that DP tag, that's going to be a problem. And you're going to really need to have Jesus Ferreira step up. You're going to have Albert Rosnak continue to produce. You're going to have Danny Musovski continue to produce. And you're going to have to hope your defense gets it together, because it's going to be a lot more like the stretch run last year than, what we're kind of hoping the stretch run this year looks like. So I think it really does just hinge on, and that's a ton of pressure for the kid, but I think it really does hinge on Pedro, because you're not getting Jordan Morris back. For a long time it was, this is great, and imagine what it's going to be like when Jordan gets back. Well, Jordan's not coming back. This is what we've got, unless the Sounders, manage to land another attacking signing, which they may well do. But even then, depending on the caliber of signing it's going to be, who knows whether they'll be able to contribute that much this year anyway.
Right. Yeah. I I'll just throw out some numbers here, just because I think it sometimes illustrates what Pedro de la Vega has done. He's only on 3 goals and 3 primary assists, but the thing is, he's only played 900 minutes in MLS play. If you break that down on a per 90 basis, he's averaging 0.59 goals and non-penalty goals and primary assists per 90 minutes. That's not maybe elite, but it's really damn good. Like that's solid production. I mean, that's better than a goal or an assist every other game. And that's basically, but I think that's if you had told me that this is what he would produce on, like if he would produce 0.59 ish goals and assists per 90 this year, I think I would have absolutely taken that at the start of the year. And obviously a lot of that is he's got 2 goals and an assist in the last 2 games. And so that's beefing up those numbers, but it's just a sort of a reminder. He hasn't played that much. Like, he's been healthy, and like that you can maybe that's on him that he hasn't done enough to warrant more playing time. But I think what he's doing right now is showing that, this is a player who should be on the field, and he's going to get, I mean, it's hard to imagine him, he might not start every Leagues Cup game, but I mean, I think he's probably the first choice left midfielder. And I suppose you can argue that's unfair to Paul Rothrock, but Rothrock hasn't, like, I don't want to have it come off that I'm bad mouthing Rothrock. He's a good player. I really want him on this team. I hope he gets paid this offseason, but really he is a complementary piece. He is a useful piece to have on the roster. If Paul Rothrock is your starting winger, that is probably not a great sign. Like, his best, his 100th percentile performance is a lot lower than Pedro de la Vega's 100th percentile performance.
Yeah.
And, and you can kind of go down the list there. Rothrock, you know what you're going to get, but Pedro de la Vega, I think he showed in these games what he can do when he's like cooking. And one of the things I just love about him, I don't think I have said this before, but man, that guy kicks the ball so hard.
He does. He really does. Yeah. And he's
like, I love watching him kick the ball hard.
Critically, he is kicking the ball hard, but low these days, which is very, it's a big development.
It is. Yeah.
But I just, to your point about Pedro and Rothrock and their relative ceilings, Paul Rothrock was producing in terms of goals and assists, but if you looked at their underlying numbers, their per 90 numbers, they were producing at about the same clip in terms of XG and G plus and everything. And that was Pedro underperforming. Just with these last two games, Pedro's underlying numbers are up there, and he's now produced at about the same level as Paul has this season in terms of the overall. So I mean, they both have 3 goals. Pedro has two fewer assists, I guess. So Paul's produced a little more, but Paul's paid 500.
Rothrock also has 500 more minutes.
Yeah, 500 more minutes. So they're producing at about the same clip. Pedro's underlying numbers are much better, and it's hard for me to believe. And like you, I want to stress, I'm not criticizing Paul Rothrock or minimizing his contributions or his abilities, but it's hard for me to believe that there are still people who don't understand that Pedro has a much higher ceiling. I really hope that those people have changed their mind over the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I just, that's the most satisfying thing, honestly, about these last 2 games is there was sort of this building chorus of, okay, I hear what you're saying about De La Vega's skills, and I hear what you're saying. Like, if you're telling me he looks great in training, I'm willing to believe you. But at the end of the day, I'd like to see it and give me some evidence that he's actually producing. And this is sort of the evidence that what he looks like. Now, can he maintain it? That's the big question. He's going to have to maintain this. And, he can't just go into a 3-goal stint where he's not set, or a 3-game stint where he's just not producing any danger. He's got to be able to, get himself into dangerous spots, get on the ball, be goal dangerous, setting up teammates. He's got to keep doing the stuff that he's doing, but it's good to see that he's shown that sign, and that he's shown it against MLS opponents. Cause I kept pointing out that this is, you look at his all comp numbers and he looked great. But it's fair to say, okay, but he had 3 goals against Antigua.
Right.
And by the way, if you look at his all comp numbers are actually pretty solid. Right.
And
6 goals and 4 assists.
I mean, it is true that you play who you put in front of you, and it's scoring goals is hard no matter who you're playing, but it's also fair to say, I don't care too much about that. I think that's reasonable. I think if a player it's one of those things where it's like if a player is producing in league games or against higher level competition, nobody's going to get mad if you say, yeah, they scored X number of goals and include those goals. When they're not producing and you say, well, if you look at their full season statistics in all competitions, it's like, if somebody scores a hat trick in the Open Cup against Cal FC,
Sacramento,
right? Yeah. Well, Sacramento. Yeah. It's a totally valid criticism, I think, when a player isn't producing in the primary competitions.
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, I think that's probably a good place to call this. We're going to come back. We are going to talk a little bit about Leagues Cup. I want to get your perspective on. Maybe we'll even power rank how we want the Sounders to do in Leagues Cup, or what the ideal outcomes for Leagues Cup will be. But you are listening to Nos Arietes.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening.
Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Haxon Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Haxon Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at haxonferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to haxonferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Haxon Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Welcome back to Nos Arietes. So Aaron and I are going to talk about Leagues Cup. And I think the avenue we want to use to talk about this, as Leagues Cup is starting today, by the way. I don't know if you know this, Aaron, but there have been 5 games in Leagues Cup. It looks like MLS is going to win one. They're going to only win one game in a shootout. The only game they've won today is in a shootout. Maybe you know the answer to this, but do you know who the one team that... So San Diego, LAFC, Columbus Crew, CF Montreal, and I think there was one other game. Maybe you know the answer. You probably know the answer to this, but I still think it's funny to ask you. Do you know what the results were today, Aaron?
I do, because you told me right before we started recording.
Oh, okay. And then Houston was the other team. Oh, wait, there's 7 games today. Jesus.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. All right. So here's this. Maybe we won't play this game. I'll just tell you. So there's 6 games today. Montreal, Columbus, New York City FC, Houston, LAFC, and San Diego. Only one MLS team won today. It was CF Montreal, who is, I believe, the worst team in MLS right now.
I believe that is correct. It looks like LAFC still has a chance to win in penalties.
You're right. I forgot it went to penalties.
Yeah. But they're playing Mazatlan, so how impressive is that, really?
Yeah.
Just kidding. I don't actually know if Mazatlan.
San Diego got pounded by Pachuca.
Yeah.
Tigres pounded Houston. Puebla, who I believe is one of the worst teams in Liga MX right now, destroyed NYCFC. Toluca beat Columbus in a shootout, and Montreal beat Lyon, who is like a solidly mid-table, maybe upper mid-table Liga MX team.
What the hell is Sports Illustrated? What the hell is Sports Illustrated Stadium? Sorry to.
Oh, that's the Red Bull Arena. They renamed it.
That sucks.
Yeah. Sports Illustrated now is basically just a branding exercise. If you didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really depressing.
And so the company that owns them apparently felt compelled to. That is a bizarre way to spend money, but
it is, and it's also funny that Red Bull would be selling naming rights to their stadium since they are
it does
an advertisement.
seem a little counterintuitive. I agree with you there.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, no,
So-
that's wild. That's very funny.
It's pretty funny, I thought.
Yeah, let's.
All right, so
But hey, you know.
different strokes. Leagues Cup.
Yeah.
So Leagues Cup, here we are. I think a fun way to talk about this is to talk about power rank the 5 outcomes that we'd like to see from the Sounders. We're kind of cheating a little bit in this, but I think it's to make a point. Number 5, what is the absolute worst outcome, Aaron? Let's start at the bottom. Well, maybe actually I take it back. This might be more fun to start at the top because I think starting at the top is a little bit more of a compelling build up to find out what you think the worst outcome is. So number 1, okay, the winning it is we like whatever. We want the Sounders to win things. We are suckers for a trophy.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, my thing is, and this will become obvious as we go along. My thing is, I want to qualify for the Champions Cup. This is the best chance they have right now. And if you're going to qualify for the Champions Cup, finish in the top 3, winning it's the best outcome. You get a trophy. It's nice to win things.
Yeah.
You get the bragging rights. It's been a while since the Sounders have won a trophy, so
it has. Yeah, that's.
It hasn't really. It's been 3 years. Like that's not. But by our standards,
exactly the Mariners.
You're right. But by our standards, it's been a while. So, winning it definitely the best outcome.
So don't let anyone tell you that Nos Audietes is poo-pooing the Leagues Cup because there you are.
No, I still am. I still am. I will go on the record of saying
you want to win. But okay. Number 2, what is the second best outcome for the Sounders?
Second best outcome, I think, is finishing 3rd, which sounds dumb, but this is my logic. You lose in a final, you end on a down note. It's a bummer to lose in a final. You were very close to winning silverware and you fell short. You get 3rd. You get an exciting 3rd place game with actual stakes, and that's pretty rare, right? Like it's not the Olympics in soccer most of the time. You're not getting a bronze medal, but here you get a Champions Cup berth, and that's cool. That's exciting. That's what we're hoping for. You get to go out on a high note. You don't get a trophy, but the last game is fun. You get to enjoy a game with stakes, and then get back to league play. Go
Champions Cup spot.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100% on that. What's number 3? What's number 3 on the list? I guess this is a downer. This is obvious. If being 3rd is the second best, what's number 3?
Being second is 3rd best because you lose and that sucks. I mean, it's the converse of everything we just said, right? Like,
but you
get the Champions Cup spot. That's the most important thing, but it's a bummer. You lose out, you lose a final, and that sucks.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. All right. So this is where it gets maybe a little bit more interesting. What's number 4 for you?
Well, number 4 is just not getting out of the group. It's not group, but the phase, getting phased out. Getting phased out. That's
phase 1.
Yeah. If you are not going to qualify for Champions Cup, I want this thing over and done with as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Ideally, if we had a crystal ball in it or a genie or whatever, and they say, I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I can tell you if you don't win your first game, there's no way you're making it to the Champions Cup. I would go for it in the first game and then play as many Defiance kids as I could in games 2 and 3. That would be the ideal.
I won't quite. I'll add this caveat. I think the Sounders have a deep enough roster that I want to see different combinations. Like they've got enough guys.
That's true. Yeah, that's fair.
There's enough first team players that like Georgie Manungu can't get on the field. I want to see that guy play 180 minutes of the last 2 games if the Sounders like. I don't mind that at all. I'll add this. I would love to see the Sounders go. If they're not going to win this thing, like going 2-1 and not getting out of the first phase would be fine with me. Like I would actually consider that kind of kind of fine. Like I want to see them maintain their momentum. I want to see. I don't want to see them like just crap the bed against Liga MX. I don't ever enjoy watching them not do well. So like, I don't want this to like. I think back to 2023 when they just got housed in both Leagues Cup games. That wasn't fun. That didn't feel good. I don't need to do that again. Last year was even though they didn't get out of the, and I guess you could argue that, maybe we're not being totally fair here, but last year was a fun. It was a fun kind of run, but they won 2 knockout games. It was a different tournament, different structure. So, whatever. But I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to not see them just suck. That said, and I guess this is kind of where we have caveats here. Essentially, well, what's number 5? What's the worst? I won't even call it number 5. What's the worst outcome, Aaron?
The worst outcome is finishing 4th.
Finishing 4th
Absolute
is the
worst outcome. Because you play all those games, you're probably going to be going really hard in the last few because you've got that chance to get silverware and Champions Cup. You probably have Christian and Obed are probably playing a ton of minutes. And yeah, it's I think the worst outcome. And then to get from that worst outcome to finishing, getting phased out, just add a game to getting phased out and go down the list. And then that's how you get to the end. Every extra game they play that doesn't lead to Champions Cup makes it worse for me.
And I will say, one of the things that was different about part of the reason I wouldn't necessarily say that last year was an example of a worst case scenario is because they took a long break from league play. Like Leagues Cup was not going on concurrently with league play at any point last year. Whereas this year, once you get out of phase 1, you're now playing midweek games in Leagues Cup and playing league games on the weekend. So it's a different structure in that way. And so there is a little bit more of a direct sort of physical cost to advancing every round. And you're sort of rolling the dice every, there's only 3 knockout rounds, which I guess limits the potential for disaster a little bit. But, it changes the equation a little bit. Whereas last year, it's like you may as well win until, you may as well win as long as you can go because you're just going to be having downtime. You're just going to be having, you weren't balancing league play at the same time. So that's what makes it a little bit different this year. And I agree with you. Finishing 4th is the worst. That is the worst outcome. You play 3 extra games. You have to play in a 3rd place game, which everyone agrees is kind of a silly thing to have to do. And of course, you don't get the Champions Cup berth. And it's like, I guess you get to say you won some games, but who cares ultimately? Like if you don't have anything to show for it, and especially if you've been, I suppose it's different. If you were able to get to 4th place while using your reserves and you're able to effectively balance league play, maybe that's a slightly different thing. But by the way, we're in round 11 we're in round 12 of the shootout right now.
Good heavens. That sounds exciting.
Almost. I mean, it's kind of we just had the goalkeeper's kick and that was fun.
Yeah, that's always fun. That's always nice.
You always love that.
Oh, Mazatlan. Looks like Mazatlan won.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess you're ahead of me then.
Oh, well, sorry to spoil that. Also, don't listen to this if you were going to watch that game later.
Right, yeah, if you were going to go back and rewatch Leagues Cup on replay.
It is funny that the score bug is faster than real time is like on TV is pretty funny.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. All right, well, I think we settled it. So the Sounders got to go win this thing. If you're going to win game, if they I guess basically if they beat Cruz Azul, you better go win this whole thing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's the toughest game. I think Cruz Azul is still the best team in CONCACAF. I don't,
best team in North America, I think, in the region.
Yeah.
CONCACAF. I guess that's what CONCACAF is.
Yeah. And I think I don't think that Botafogo is that much better than them, and Botafogo is really good. So
yeah, totally.
If you can beat Cruz Azul, I think you've got to feel like you can beat the other teams you're up against. And if you can beat those guys, you can beat anybody else in the competition, and blah 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 blah. So it would be nice, and I think similar to Club World Cup, maybe these guys could use the confidence boost that, hey, you can hang with these teams, but win the whole thing if you're going to do it. And if you're not going to win the whole thing, finish third. Just, Yeah.
And so I will add, while we're here, these results, I suppose, are good for the Sounders' chances of advancement, because they are basically no MLS team got 3 points today. Montreal was the only team that even got 2 points. Everyone else got 1 or 0. So, I guess that's more evidence that if they can beat Cruz Azul, they're in great position. But I think that's what we got, Aaron. That's what we got. We'll see if there's some transfer. Maybe by recording today, we'll force some transfer news to happen. Remember we used to be able to do that? Oh man, those were the days.
That was nice. Yeah, that was really nice.
Those were the days.
Oh, not to keep harping on this, but Bouanga is the guy that missed the penalty.
I know. I just saw it. And he skied it.
That makes it so much nicer. All right. I like Leagues Cup again. That would be nice. I would love to see the Sounders spend money. And
I will say I'll close with this note. From the people that I've been talking to, I usually get a pretty good sense of how confident they are that they're going to get someone, and they seem reasonably confident that they're going to sign someone. Either this Noah Ohio guy, who is the Dutch striker that has been most directly linked to the Sounders, or someone else. So I'm going to be hopefully, but it would be nice if they got this done by the end of Leagues Cup, I think.
Yeah, it would be nice if they had. I'm assuming whoever they sign is probably going to be a striker. So it would be nice if they had them on the team with enough time to contribute this season. To expect to contribute this season. Osaze looked great against Atlanta. He scored the goal. I like him a lot as a player, but I like him a lot better as the third striker than the backup striker. So, and I don't like Jesus Ferreira getting minutes at striker either. So, it'd be nice to get that wrapped up. Definitely before the end of the Leagues Cup. It'd be nice, like you said, to get it wrapped up by tomorrow. And I'll tell you, Jeremiah, I would not sneeze at another defensive midfielder either. The Sounders just signed Sander Brunel, but JP's still a few weeks out at least, right? You said, I think today, maybe
4 weeks is what month.
Yeah. So that's tough, because that's just a lot of minutes for Christian and Obed to have to struggle through. And even if he's back in a month, how healthy is he going to be? How fresh is he going to be? How capable of contributing is he going to be right away? So I still, that's for me still a priority for them. So can you imagine if they signed 2 players in this window?
Can you imagine?
Be pretty unbelievable.
Can you imagine? Well, that's a good note to end on, I think, on that hopeful note of maybe signing 2 players. Who knows? But I'll take one foreign signing. That's what I'm going to set the bar at. That's what we need to be reasonably satisfied here. Everyone else is signing. Vancouver Whitecaps are signing Thomas Mueller on TAM deals, and Inter Miami is signing DePaul on TAM deal. And
one of those is a valid TAM deal. One of them is one of the.
Can you imagine? Not to get too distracted here, but if LAFC had signed Thomas Mueller on a TAM, we would have been losing our minds.
I would have been pretty annoyed about that. But I mean, it's not like they had great luck with their old guy last time. So I think Mueller is the perfect signing for Vancouver, because he's TAM, so he's not taking a DP spot, and he doesn't have to be an MVP caliber player to justify a spot. He fits really well into their team, and he's also he's an old guy, but his game was never about being the most athletic guy you're ever going to see, right? So I think he's a really good signing for them, and good for them, I guess. I don't have anything against Vancouver.
I know. I just have such a hard time getting worked up over Vancouver. Yeah. All right, and good for them. They're calling it the biggest signing in team history. So
yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Ryan Gould's a better player, but
yeah, but
at this point in his career,
right? I agree.
Nobody get mad at me.
All right, well let's call it there. Thank you to our sponsor, Full Pool Wines and Hacks and Ferments. Thank you to Lick It for producing this thing. Of course, thank you to all of you for continuing to subscribe. We are now heading into August. August is the most important month in Sounder at Heart for Sounder at Heart subscribers. This is the time of year where basically the biggest chunk of our subscribers are asked to renew their subscriptions. So I hope you will do that. If you really want to be awesome, you can upgrade your membership. That would be even more awesome. But, things are going well, but they can never be going too well in this world of Chat GPT and everything else that is sucking the life out of real people doing real journalism. And I like to think that's what we do here. So please consider upgrading your membership. If you don't, I hope you at least will maintain your membership. And with all that said, I'm Jeremiah Shine signing off for Aaron Campo. This is No Sadietes, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Remember, you'll never get alone.
I expect a LAFC who's motivated to prove themselves at home, to prove to their fans that they're capable of winning in this league. And it's up to us to really brew in the party.
I feel a lot better than Bob.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing. Which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery. So you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.